think most leaders would think to take this hand and go yoink.
Right, exactly.
And that is incorrect. Hello and welcome to another zany episode of Nerdy West Coast Swing, the podcast with pixels where the anchors are out of this world and the points don't matter. We are here to help train your eyes so you can learn faster and dance better. I'm Cassie Winter.
I'm Alicia Marshall. If you're wondering who are we to be analyzing these pros, Cassie and I both have extensive training and experience in both partnered and solo dancing. Cassie has about 22 years and I have about 24. So tonight we are taking a look at Robert Royston and Laureen Baldovi. Initially, our goal was because of the Open not happening. We wanted to do it around this time. Mm-hmm. So that is what we're talking about tonight.
So we're looking at their Fever exhibition that they did in 2018. So not the original time that they competed with this routine, but the new and improved higher pixel version of this routine. So it's easier to analyze in this digital world that we're in.
Laureen's outfit is the same.
Yes.
I wish Robert... Have you seen his original outfit?
I probably have and have erased it from my mind.
Okay, so you know how Laureen's dress is like just jewel? He has that on his arms, but they're like puffy sleeves, and then he has like a mullet going on. Really wish he would have brought that back.
If only just to rip it off before walking onto the stage and having his new costume underneath. Transformation. Anyways. I'm going to drop the link to the routine in the chat. Go ahead and give it a watch, and when you're done, we'll get to analyzing. I just want to highlight how masterfully phrased this choreography is, because it's a really simple song, but with a really fast beats per minute to it, which is a really fun kind of paradoxical combination to play with. And it's really important to highlight both aspects of the song, the fast beats and also the kind of slower lyrical part of the song. And this choreography is amazing in that you have those fast and those staccato moments, but you also have moments of breath where not only Robert and Laureen are getting a break, but we, the audience, are getting a break to ramp up to the next thing. So I just want to highlight that because it's a thing we talk about a lot here on Nerdy, but every time it's done well, I want to be like this, like this.
Yeah, it was very similar to my overall commentary on the dance in general. It's really well choreographed. There's a lot of details in it that you kind of miss if you're just, not paying as much attention. Especially Laureen does like a little tap footwork at the end of it to go with like the drum sound. And it's like really, really minor, but it's really cool looking.
Yep.
Anyways, I think we can move on.
There's only one other thing I wanted to say, just overall as a performance thing, because so often the follow just tends to dominate the performance energy of a routine. Whereas I just love how Robert is one of those champions who can bring just as much energy to the performance aspect as their partner. And seeing that balanced across the partnership is always so wonderful to watch. So yeah.
I think the important part about it is that he doesn't overtake her and her presence. He very carefully chooses his times to address the audience and do something that is like styling for him. That's, something that it's choreographed for you to see. So,
to the screen share. So super minor, but I just want to highlight how dynamic this opening position and pose is. Particularly from Robert, but also how Laureen is kind of demure and small behind him. It's setting up personalities for both of them without it being oppressive or unwelcoming.
Right. And then we get a beginning that is, it takes up space. So Laureen kind of changes from really being small and kind of turned it on herself to opening up with these kicks, and she really elongates the leg, which takes up a lot of extra space.
But it's still in closed position. which is just like so amazing, because then they have even further to go after it. They haven't hit like max extension as a partnership.
Yeah.
And like the detail of how she's really prepping by tucking her head down and like concaving her chest a little bit, so she has somewhere extra to go.
Yeah.
To take up space.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a wonderful contrast for the performance and for her character.
Yeah, I think she's also using that to kind of glance at where Robert's foot is. So because you can see she's planting her planted foot.
Her right foot.
Yeah. She's planting that, and she's making sure it's like right where his foot is, so that she is swinging out to the side of him, because she doesn't want him to cover up any of her body. She wants to make sure that it's like her swinging out to the side of him.
Yeah.
And so she's making sure that that foot is right where his is at.
Yep. We can see her entire silhouette.
And Robert helps by moving in the opposite direction with his upper body. I really like how they use specific like stopping points, because the song in particular, it's not like a flowy song. Like it is a little bit, but there's a lot of like sharp hits and beats, and they're really working with that, and I appreciate it. And a lot of Laureen's like poses that she's hitting is going along with those like really sharp hits in the music. This is interesting.
I just love this little simple detail of it being a free spin. And instead of like normally as a leader for a free spin, you just kind of wait to reconnect.
Yeah.
But Robert has this moment to be like, look, Ma, no hands. But like in a serious way. You'd appreciate that joke. I'm not embarrassed.
Probably, yeah.
Before going into these grapevines. And I just love the focus that he has on her through this moment, because another thing that I can see, for example, in some like rising star couples is a leader's eyes will technically be aimed at their partner, but they'll be like glazed over.
Or the other option is that they're looking slightly to the right or slightly to the left of where their partner's eyes are.
Right.
I have personal experience with that one.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. My rising star routine, I was the leader, so I was the one paying attention. Although my partner was much smaller than me, so I tried to do it without, completely sacrificing my height. That's always fun.
Yeah. The first time that we performed one of our routines, Chris was like looking ever so slightly to the left when we're supposed to be looking at each other. Not done. I was like, hey, so maybe you should like look at my face.
Yeah.
I could tell that
matter.
he was looking like behind me over my shoulder.
Oh my God. Yeah, eye lines matter. Check out our recording from last week's episode to hear more.
Yeah. It's not as boring as it sounds.
I know. This is such like a unique and fun moment to be doing this simple ride, partial weight supported, and then to end in just like close position and do like a simple squat that's connected. Because they're trying, because the song, it's called Fever. It's about like proximity. You feel the heat, that kind of stuff. I'm not going to say anymore because it'll just get awkward. Y'all know what I'm talking about. No. But it is like a really simple way to kind of start really adding that element into the dance. So that way they have somewhere to go with it, as opposed to starting with the roastiest, toastiest, to cut the slice the tension with a knife. I don't know. Sorry. I'm going to move forward now.
That was beautiful.
You're welcome.
Toastiest. Are we?
There are two some behind the back. I just love this moment so much.
It's a really good moment. It's the first time that they both address the audience together.
Mm-hmm.
Because really, for most of the routine, they're taking turns addressing the audience.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a couple points where they address the audience at the same time. And it's really impactful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's not like they're doing anything major, anything complicated. It's more of the looking at the audience and being like, are you engaged? Are you watching?
Mm-hmm. It's like both the song and the quality of the choreography gives me a bit of a Broadway feel to it, where it tends to just oscillate back and forth between something intimate versus something that's projected out towards the audience.
Yeah.
And the switching back and forth between those things keeps it like really dynamic to watch.
And one important thing about this simultaneous look is that Laureen has to be on the correct foot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she syncopates.
Right, so she has to make sure that she's on that right foot in order to open and kind of move to the left.
Mm-hmm. So right here, she plants her left foot, ba, and then steps onto her right, da, ba-da. Where Royston is only taking one step, she's taking two.
Mm-hmm.
And then because they're like, their faces and their eyes are so much of what we're looking at, we are not seeing this shenanigans unless we're looking for it. And I just want to highlight, like, that looks bonkers, but this is a testament of the thing that I wish I could like hydraulic press into every leader's brain. As a leader, you are the variable, and you should not make the follow adjust their frame to you. You should be adjusting your frame to them. So as he like goes to start leading Laureen out of this, he's the one in the crazy bonkers position, and he does his best right here to dislocate his own shoulder so that way her right arm is in an ergonomic position. That's first place shit right there, if you ask me.
Great. I also want to say that in a routine setting, it's different. If there is a moment, like if you're doing a routine, if there's a moment with your partner where technically the lead should be the one kind of contorting themselves, but it doesn't look as nice. And so you want to change that a little bit. Those are times where that might be different. But anytime you're like social dancing, you want to make sure that as a lead, you're the one in the really awkward position.
Yeah. And another thing, like if anyone is ever interested in doing their own choreography, is part of what contributes to those decisions in a choreography. If maybe the leader is going to be the one with a kind of quote unquote normal frame and the follow is the one adjusting, is where are the audience's eyes looking?
Yeah.
So right here, it's less important what Robert's arm is doing, because all we see as the audience are their faces and their eyes. Noticing the arm is an afterthought if you're going to notice it. And so it can be almost like sleight of hand, like you're doing one thing over here, but it doesn't matter because the audience is looking somewhere else.
Right. I really like the hand position that Laureen gets into.
I was just going to remark on his hands because they're nice and high on her back for great connection. And then hers, like, just lovely arm lines and range of motion.
It's so when she comes up, as she's kind of prepping to wrap around him, she makes sure that she extends that energy all the way through the fingers and past them. So you don't want any floppy hands in this situation, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. There's intention, and it's coming from her core, as opposed to being disconnected from her core.
Yeah, it's also kind of a unique hand position for follows. Generally, you don't see that kind of like spread hand where it's just like palm out type. But it emphasizes what she's doing, which is why she does it that way.
Mm-hmm. And something really interesting about the hand placement for Robert on Laureen's back is it's mainly to prep for the small around the world dip that they're going for.
Mhm. Yeah.
But what's interesting is socially, if you want to do pivots like that, you need to get your partner to be really close. So you can see how Laureen is really stepping her right foot all the way into the instep of Robert's right foot.
Yeah.
So that way the insides of their knees touch. And as he swings through, like they're really connected through their thighs and their pelvis. Because
Mm-hmm.
when you're doing pivots, you're sharing a center, so you
Yeah.
need that proximity. And socially, if you put your hands this high on a follow's hips are probably gonna not want to get close.
Yeah.
Which follows prerogative. I'm not going to be mad about it.
Yeah.
But unless you, whether you're a leader or a follow, you're trained to have that tight thigh pelvis connection for pivots. Pivots are going to feel like you're in a centrifuge.
That's one way
And
to describe it.
yeah, it's like that game on the playground where you'd like hook your pinkies with a friend and you just like run around in a circle of like and letting the energies kind of force you apart from each other. It's a lot of work if you're not connected properly, is what I'm saying.
Yes.
Since,
Aaron is quoting Friends.
oh, of course he is. I am proud, sir. What's he saying?
I assume that most of you know what he's talking about.
Oh,
The
yes,
couch situation
he
where
is.
where they wanted to pivot.
Yeah, he's quoting the great Ross Geller, pivot, and then Chandler, blah, 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 blah. He gets so mad about it. Anyways,
back to what we were talking about.
So this is the around the world dip. And this is a really, really small, tight version because they just don't have much time. Usually, when you want to do like a full range of motion for this kind of dip, you just need more time to be able to do it well and safely. And this is actually from last week's episode. It seemed really clear that Robert wanted Sean to leave Susan in and around the world. This is what this is that dip, but probably
I just had a moment.
A bigger
Robert
one.
was in last week's episode.
He's everywhere, as he should be.
If you go back and you watch the original video of this dance from when they first performed it, I believe this is a little bit more dramatic.
Gotcha. That would make sense. Because I can be like really hard on your spine.
Yeah.
If your spine is not trained to do that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Speak from experience.
I actually wanted to talk about Robert's hand.
These hands?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I also have something to say about that moment, but you go first.
I just wanted to mention how intentional he has his hand positioning. He has a very ballroom type hand.
Yeah, the way his fingers are shaped is very ballroom.
Yeah. And he's doing the same thing that Laureen was doing earlier, which is he's extending that energy past his fingers. Because once again, we don't want limp hands.
No limp hands here.
I say that because for the longest time, that was one of my problems. So that's something I noticed.
So I want to highlight the timing because they're not both hitting this moment together. Robert's hitting it a hair second earlier than Laureen because it is now his job to travel down the slide. If he had hit that shape, that pose at the same time as Laureen, he would have had less time to move into his next pattern. So like it's a minor detail. Like when you're watching it at speed, it reads like more or less they're doing something at the same time.
Yeah.
But that slight dissociation in timing is allowing Robert to lead into this next section where he's traveling past Laureen.
Yeah. It's a very specific timing.
Yeah, because they're trying to hit that dip. And that one needs to be together and on time.
I also really appreciate the pose that Laureen gets into. She has a nice hand on the hip, and she has her right leg extended in a really nice leg line, and she doesn't just have her foot on the floor, like flat on the floor. She has that heel up off the floor to make sure that that leg line is really nice and straight and flows from the top of her all the way down to the floor.
Yeah, she has basically maxed out the point in her ankle almost to get that line, which can be a bit of an optical illusion because in those kind of heels, it gives a silhouette as if the ankle is flexed more. But
even though not.
It's not. Her ankle is very pointed. And then Robert is doing an absolutely delightful job of spotting her so he doesn't judo chop her and decapitate her. Very important.
It's important.
And then where he's stepping with his right foot and then bringing her to him is really important. So you notice how their sides are kind of like zipped together and her right leg is actually behind his right leg. So that way the side of his thigh can basically be like a bumper for her to run into and then bend over into this dip. So they have a lot of connection points throughout the sides of their body to make that safe at the speed that they're doing it.
Yeah, because that's a really weird angle. I love Laureen's hair.
Her hair's
frozen straight up.
Oh yeah. Hey.
What I was saying was it's a really awkward position for her to be in because she's not only dipping backwards, but she's dipping at an angle backwards and like really not over her feet at all.
Yeah, she's basically twisting like in a corkscrew from the floor all the way up. And to twist the spine like that, that's a very precarious position to put your spine into. So having those extra connection points and a leader who will bring you up equal and opposite and not ask your spine to continue to twist in bad directions. So you can see she goes down the same way she comes back up. It's just reversed.
And Robert has two hands on each side of her. So it's really, really controlled, making sure that everything goes at the same time.
Yep. And her right arm is also wrapped around him for even further stability.
Yeah.
You can see just the placement of their foot like in parallel next to each other. Like it's the precision is bonkers.
But it has to be that, you know?
Yeah.
Otherwise it doesn't work out.
Yeah. It is required precision, but it doesn't make it any less impressive.
Exactly.
And now they both look at the audience again. It's like, did you see that? That was amazing. It's like a moment. Not only are they getting like that sequence is over, but as an audience, we're getting to register what we just saw because we're having a moment. Oh, it's so cute.
I don't think I've noticed that.
I just love it so much because I think the lyric is "When you kiss me," and that's what they're accenting.
Yeah. like I mentioned earlier, that there's a lot of small details in this routine.
Mm-hmm.
He's making sure to give her a lot of space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's leading it in such a way that it feels more or less like normal turns to her.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the one that's in charge of the hand shenanigans.
Yeah, exactly.
Technical term.
Yep. Very technical.
All right, this position right here.
This locked position.
There's well, it's a locked position, but I just want to highlight how many people's arms are in sad positions relative to their body. So like Laureen's right arm is hammerlocked behind her, and Robert's left arm is like crossed in front of him at a really awkward angle. So like this connection is accessory in this situation because that's like compromising. There's probably pressure over here in the side of her ribs into the hand. But I would argue the most of the connection is his forearm against her upper back.
Yeah.
That's my guess where the dominant connection
is. I mean, it
right
has
here.
to be, really.
Yeah. I just want to highlight that because I think most leaders would think to take this hand and go yoink.
Right, exactly.
And that is incorrect. This forearm gently pushes that way.
Yes.
Okay, now that that's cleared up.
Gently, but like solidly.
Yeah, firmly. And another dip, and this is now the biggest dip we've gotten. So like the level change that we've been having in the dips has been growing each time. So the around the world dip was not as low. The next one, the kind of corkscrew one, was about in between that first one and this one, and now Laureen is going down even farther. So it's a really great way to like escalate what's going on through time.
Yeah. Erin said, firmly grasp it, and then said, I'm sorry, I'm full of TV references.
Never apologize for references. They are the blood of life.
They are. They are. And to your point, one of the last dips that they do, it's a very, very dramatic one. Mm-hmm. So it really progresses slowly throughout the dance.
Yeah. And then another element that's built throughout this routine is callbacks to earlier pieces of choreography and doing it similar but slightly different. So her rolling out of this locked position into this ronde is very similar to how they started the dance in the beginning in closed position that we highlighted. And there are lots of little elements like that where they're accenting the same piece of the music in a similar but ever so slightly different way.
Right.
That choreography right there is so satisfying.
It really is.
And see right here again, they're now highlighting the slower melody of the song. So instead of going with the fast rhythm, they're going halftime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so we're having another breath
through that section of a lot of arm.
Yeah, and a lot of spinning and level changes. And now we get to chill, and the focus is on her.
Mm-hmm.
And there we have grapevines again. So we had grapevines earlier, just going in a different direction, and then this time they were coming towards the audience.
Yeah.
Look at that hand. That was
so nice,
sir. So Robert's right hand. So he preps it. So he's really like flexing his wrist before he follows through with it. And like that right there, like those 3 frames, like I trained in 3D character animation, mimicking that kind of follow through and origin of movement and overlap
would be very hard.
is such a bitch. It is so hard to replicate. It's just like, oh, but it's so beautiful.
Such a fine detail.
Yeah.
I
And then I
actually
love her pose.
also really love how he ends it, like up and open. It's not a commonly used hand position, at least for West Coast.
Yeah, it's really interesting because if we just compare the dominant lines in this image, so we've got a vertical, we've got these angles, but we've got another vertical. So like he's both paralleling her, but also there's a little bit of what?
He's paralleling her.
Am I brought these parallel lines?
You're right.
Oh, laugh at
We
me.
said it.
Don't laugh at me. But there's a part of it like this line is encouraging this way and this one is sending us this way. So like it's directing our eye lines at Laureen. The way this is composed, if you were to think of it as a static image. It would be extra powerful if this weren't interrupting that as like a break in between them. I now want to like erase the background, but I can't do that here. And this pose that she's in is similar to ones she's been in earlier in the routine. So once again, we're calling back to elements that they've had before, just in a new way. Okay, it's so funny, like, because he sells this moment so beautifully, but in slow motion, you can see that, like, right through here, he's like, oh, I don't want to eat her hair. And then he gets to, like, oh, yeah. But there's that split second of, like, hair. I know that feeling.
Yeah.
That is such a fun variation because it's like so normal nowadays for the follow to just plant on that forward right foot, carry their weight over that foot and rotate to the right in a forward ocho. But they just stop and redirect it, and she gets the fun flick of the foot. I'm now remembering Princess Diaries for some reason. The foot pop, that's what it's called.
I totally had forgotten about that.
Yeah. I'm just full of dusty memories. I felt inspired to watch Bedknobs and Broomsticks last night. I only got through the first half, but it was one of my favorite movies when I was a kid, and it does not disappoint now. I'm looking forward to watching the second half. All right, illusion turns are thusly called because Robert's right hand is the one leading just normal, albeit never-ending spins, whereas his left hand is just kind of following along and pretending to participate. That's what we'll call it. We'll call it pretending to participate.
Seems all right.
But it's his right hand that is leading the illusion turns.
Yeah, and with illusion turns for follows, it's extremely important that you relax your arms. This is not a turn where you want to have your arms really active because it completely like disengages the really smooth illusion part of it.
So right here, there's that illusion. So he's leading with his right hand and her right wrist breaks through their other hand connection very seamlessly.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate how in the breaths between the breaking of the wrist, he is separating the hands from each other.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times a leader has tried to lead me in an illusion turn, but they just keep like both hand holds like right up next to each other. And it just becomes like
claustrophobic.
There's just too much going. Like, which hand am I paying attention to? Like, they all become one giant mutant hand. It's not helpful, but this separation, especially also so for a follow to like open up their chest to prep for the next rotation, like that's a really important element.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love this face so much.
It's a good one.
It's so good. And this is great because this is like another really strong staccato hit.
Yeah.
But it's not a dip. It's something different. And it also gives them and us a break again. Haha, pun. Sorry. But it's different. We're not experiencing any sort of like monotony and repetition that's like too oppressive. There's variety to it.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, her foot position is so nice.
Very pretty.
That third foot, y'all, like genuine third foot.
I want to point out how close Laureen's legs are together when she's turning from this stopped position. She's barely moving her feet apart from where they were at in that third foot position. And it's because she's turning in place. A lot of follows have a really wide turning stance, and that's not helpful for if you are rotating in place.
Yeah. I think maybe some of that confusion comes from a lot of how you're taught to turn in the beginning of your West Coast swing journey is traveling.
Yeah.
And in that case, you do want a slightly wider stance so you can travel further, but you also need to have the skill to turn in a tight radius.
Yeah. I more often than not keep my legs completely together when I turn, even if I'm like doing some traveling. Unless I'm doing a large amount of traveling, I just prefer it. It's easier.
Gotcha. If you are knock-kneed like me, however, we can only dream.
And we have that arm to back connection again as he kind of rotates her out of that.
Yeah, his upper arm. But I want to emphasize that the pressure is not on her neck. It is on her back.
Upper back. Very upper back.
Very important distinction.
Yeah, putting your arm on the neck won't get you what you want.
Oh God, and like short leaders will do that to me. So they'll put their forearms on my, and then the angle of pressure is downward, and it's like, it's awful. I'm gonna move on and not think about it.
Harder.
It is so painful. It's like they're hanging off of me like a human-sized necklace, and it is painful. I nope out of there like a turtle. Like I think that's what the motion ends up feeling like. It's like, ugh. All right. These kind of alternating turns are really a staple for Robert because he leads these socially and competitively all the time. And the main thing to think about if you're trying to learn how to do these is it's alternating. Follow goes, leader goes, follow goes, leader goes. If you're trying to just create it as an ongoing chain. If you're trying to do your turning at the same time as your follow, gonna not end well.
End well.
Does not end well. And then the other thing that complicates it because of that alternating nature is the handhold kind of does 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing. So it'll like progress and then it'll come back to go over the leader. But this is another one of those situations where, as a leader, you want to be compensating for the follow. So that way, see how he's going under his own forearm and wrist instead of his handhold? That's to make it so Laureen isn't having to reach as far.
Yeah. And he's also doing it once she is in a less compromising arm position, giving himself more space to turn on his own.
Yeah. So right here, like her arm is more or less in front of her. So
exactly.
It's easier. Oh God, this moment. I don't know why I had forgotten this happened. I was so startled watching it, but it's so funny. Bam. Oh, yes, I love it so much. I don't know if that, like, the vibe is supposed to be like, you didn't see that, or like, what are you looking at?
I'm not sure. It's not sure what that face is supposed to be communicating.
Either way, I love it.
Yeah. Great.
Oh, so good, Robert. Yes. So here's another one of those situations where he is adjusting himself to not murder Laureen. So notice the handhold and where it is in space. He's actually letting it come up a little bit.
Yeah.
For him to pass it to his other hand. He is not pulling the handhold down. I repeat, he is not pulling the handhold down. Okay, thank you.
I feel like that's one of your favorite soapboxes.
There are just, like, I've made this joke before, but really, there are so many hills I would die on. I'm just going to be strewn about the countryside in small, like, cubic inch pieces of myself. It'll be quite the way to go.
I want to point out where his hand goes for that duck thing.
Oh yeah, that's important. All right, so his right hand, Laureen's, yes, it's right to right. I can tell what right is. So right to right, those hands are the one that's leading the turn. And their lefts are following through. And Robert basically puts his hand in her armpit and upper arm. And he's really
very friendly.
Very friendly, but it's more on the arm side of the shoulder than the rib cage. And that creates more space. If his hand were down here on her shoulder blade, she would have less elevation of a window to get through. But when it's up on her arm, she can fit through much easier, which is really helpful. Because, like, when she's in these heels, she's his height, if not like ever so slightly. Yeah, she's basically his height. So that slight variation makes it so much easier for her to fit.
Yeah. And then he just drags the hand down the arm.
And then you can see how he's even bending his elbow here to make even more room for her.
That's really important.
And this is how close they were. Like, her hand is like on his back when she comes out of that.
Yeah.
Oh, so this is nice. So this is calling back to the lyric when you kiss me, where they actually like mime the smooch. It's a very similar vibe, but again, they're doing something different with a body roll.
Yeah.
No actual smooching this time. Oh, I love this. Please hold while I save this because that's thumbnail territory right there. I don't wanna. Yeah. Let me save it so I don't forget, because that is fabulous. Okay. Thank you for tolerating my shenanigans. We are back.
Back to the regularly scheduled program.
Yeah. It's so, like, it's a simple thing that they're doing. But it's just so impactful. with the way they're performing it during most system resources.
It's like a moment that is showing the connection between them, even though they're aimed at the audience.
Yep.
I just want to point out that they're doing like a tuck and release of the hips in order to get that motion. So Laureen kind of tucks her hips forward as she goes down and releases it back. And then it comes back up under her as she comes back up. So we have a tuck on the way down, release, tuck on the way up, release. And I am saying Laureen specifically because it's a lot easier to see what she's doing.
Yeah,
Royston just kind of blends in with the happening in the background.
Yeah,
he's doing the same thing though.
Right, yeah. But the lines on her dress make it a lot easier to see.
Yeah.
And once again, like you highlighted earlier, her free foot is in that gorgeous line while she's doing this.
Yeah, and she doesn't have any like pressure on it. It's just placed there.
Mm-hmm. All right, I want to highlight the intense focus that Robert has through here. Because as a follow in this kind of position, when you're spotting, you only have a split second every rotation to gauge depth and distance from your partner.
Yeah.
And so it's really up to the leader, Robert in this case, to make sure he is gauging the size of his steps going back appropriately. So that way they're positioned relative to each other correctly for her to be able to put her hand on his chest and end up in this shape. So her elbow is in front of her. She's rotated slightly to the left. She's not so close that she has turned into a T-Rex. And she's not so far away that she's asking him to kiss her hand. There's like
it is surprisingly complicated, rotating in the same direction.
Yeah. Can you tell I get the T-Rex situation all the time? Like, I just give up at this point. I don't even put my hand on leader's chest anymore because I'm like, I don't want to be a T-Rex. Okay, thanks. Ooh, so fussy.
And they really highlight this by making sure they're looking back towards the flag area and then coming forward to the audience.
Yeah, that's one of those things. Contrast. I harp on it all the time. So he looks away. So that way this look towards us has so much more power. If he had just been looking straight at her, like she is at him, it would have been much less powerful.
Yeah. And she almost kind of over rotates her hips towards the left. So then they come back to an open or like centered position when they look forward towards the audience.
Yeah. And bam! So this is like the biggest escalation we've had so far in the routine. And like, you can think back to how each weight supported move has been more intense, larger range of motion, bigger elevation change or skill level as we've gone on. So it's been continuing to escalate instead of like starting out with the strongest thing you can do and then having nowhere to go.
It's a really nice line that happens between the two of them. There's kind of like 4 points to it.
But we're not done yet.
This is really interesting.
I love it because it's like an escalation in intimacy instead of like choreography.
Yeah.
It's a character and story escalation.
And it's also interesting the way that they're kind of compressing into and getting out of it, because she has her leg, like her shin, like on his thigh.
Yeah. So like right here, it's not just that her shin is in his hand, but it's also compressing into his leg.
And that's where, you know, there's she starts moving backwards. That's where he's directing that from, really.
And he's really sitting back with his hips, and so he's leading by reversing that.
Yeah.
And driving through. He's really pushing off of this back foot to get her out of that.
Yeah, and it helps that they're like torso to torso. So when he starts moving back, it moves her back as well. But the driving place is more from that like thigh and shin connection.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit after, well, tender, but
and I think we're maybe like halfway through the routine. So maybe we could do the second half at a later date. And do like a delayed part 2. But was there a particular moment that you wanted to hunt for, or have we seen it already?
I mean, there was a couple moments at the end, but we can talk about it if we do a part 2.
All right, cool. So we will plan on doing a part 2. We will reconvene.
Yes.
It's such a good routine. It is so fabulous and delightful, and it deserves a full frame through. So we will be off next week, but we will be back the following week with something delightful. I don't remember what it is, but we have it planned.
Actually, I mean, we could push it back and just finish this.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good idea. So yeah, maybe we'll be back in 2 weeks to finish this.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. It's been fun as always, and we will see y'all soon.
See you next time. Bye. I just don't remember seeing the mullet phase.
Oh, I can't forget it. It was
I mean, I know I've seen it, but I just can't remember it for some reason.
It was the mulletiest of mullets.
Yeah.
Also, like, mullets are in again.
Yeah.
And somehow I don't hate them, and it terrifies me. Small PSA, I have felt like I'm on the verge of a sneeze for like the past 5 minutes, so I might be overtaken at some point. I apologize in advance. I think I might have scared my sneeze away. I'm excited.
And that's not a bad thing, I don't think.
You should just like hate it when like you feel like you need to sneeze, but it doesn't happen. It's torture.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you need to yawn and you just can't quite.
Yeah.